Herculaneum, a city that thrived in ancient Rome and was a place where a brilliant civilization bloomed, turned to ashes in an instant in AD 79. On the day of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, Herculaneum disappeared into history. Then, 2,000 years later, one day in the 18th century, a remarkable discovery was made in a mansion of Herculaneum that had become a chance finding. As many as 1,800 ancient papyrus scrolls have been discovered. The papyrus that had been sealed for fear of damage at that time could now be read without being unfolded, thanks to advanced 3D scanning technology and AI learning. It is said that very secret content was included within. What content could possibly be contained in the papyrus? Pompeii, the ancient Roman city that blossomed with a brilliant civilization, was one of the most prosperous cities. However, in AD 79, as the ash of Vesuvius erupted, everything turned to ashes in an instant. It was the last day of Pompeii. However, there is a less-known fact. The cities that vanished due to the volcanic eruption were not only Pompeii. The location of the Bay of Naples and the volcano is in southern Italy. The Bay of Naples is, even now, known as a place where resorts were concentrated in ancient times. Among them, the city closest to the volcano was Herculaneum. It is said that the impact of the volcanic eruption, estimated to be akin to the atomic bomb in Hiroshima, reached Herculaneum in less than a quarter of an hour. On that day, Herculaneum, along with Pompeii, vanished into history. Thus, after approximately 2,000 years, the forgotten city of Herculaneum re-emerged in the early 18th century. Remarkable discoveries continue to be made at the excavated site. Among the discoveries, the most astonishing was the enormous number of scrolls found in a massive mansion. They were scrolls. There are as many as 1,800 of them, which holds immense historical value. In the past, any form of books was incredibly expensive. Collecting places was very difficult unless one had great wealth or was a national-level entity. Moreover, the papyrus was made from plant stems, which made it very fragile. For this reason, most ancient documents were mostly lost during the transition to the medieval period. However, the Herculaneum papyrus scroll was completely engulfed by the city. Ironically, it was buried in volcanic ash, which has allowed it to be preserved until now. However, unfolding the papyrus, which had burnt like firewood due to high temperatures, was not an easy task. Scholars tried various methods to open the papyrus but were unable to prevent its damage. Scholars ultimately decided to seal the remaining papyrus, believing that technology would advance someday in the distant future. Thus, time passed, and in 2015, a research team led by Professor Brent from the University of Kentucky developed technology to read the ink inside the scrolls without unfolding them using 3D scanning technology via CT. In fact, scrolls found near Israeli settlements have been read using this technology, revealing biblical verses. However, in the case of the Herculaneum papyrus, the ink's composition was carbon-based, making it difficult to distinguish the letters from the charred papyrus. In light of this, Professor Shield's research team found a solution once again in 2019 after much contemplation. They decided to look for the subtle changes that would have certainly occurred when the ink was applied to the papyrus. They used a particle accelerator at the UK Diamond light source to perform high-resolution 3D scans to detect the internal text of the papyrus. There was, however, the problem was that extracting text from the scanned material took significant time and cost. Thus, deciphering the extracted text was also not easy. After several years without progress, the actual professor made a significant decision. By bringing in global support in 2023, Professor Shield's research team decided to open source the scan data and code of the papyrus. A challenge was held to select outstanding works among those who detect or decode text from the papyrus and award prizes. This challenge, which started with the sponsorship of IT companies, had a total prize of $1 million. How long has it been since the challenge started? About half a year later, in October 2023, a team finally made the first successful decoding of the papyrus. The protagonist, Luke Pyriter, decodes letters representing purple, which is an ancient Greek word, porphyra. Purple was a color symbolizing wealth and power, representing ancient kings and emperors. Anything is difficult at first. Is that not easy to say? Luke Pyriter made his code publicly available. The decoding of the papyrus began to accelerate. The gradually decoded papyrus contained even more clandestine and substantial content than expected. It was about the Epicurean school known as hedonism. Hedonism is a philosophy that proposes pleasure as essential for one's happiness, claiming that pleasure is the only purpose of life and the highest good. Generally, hedonism refers to sensory pleasure. While physical pleasure comes to mind first, the hedonism of the Epicurean school pursued a deeper, more spiritual form of pleasure. In simpler terms, it is a contemplation of how to enjoy life. This is because the site where the papyrus was discovered was the villa of Lucius Calpurnius Piso, Julius Caesar's father-in-law and a patron of the Epicurean school at that time. Thus, it was assumed. By the way, the hedonism of the Epicurean school clashed with early Christian values, which emphasized moderation and faith in God, and was often criticized as heretical. The Vesuvius challenge continues even today. Their goal this year is to decode more than 90% of the 4 papyrus scrolls scanned so far. In this way, technology clarifies not only our future but also our past. American astronomer Carl Sagan mentioned this in his book, Cosmos. He said this: "Books are like seeds. They did not sprout for centuries but suddenly bloomed into brilliant flowers one day." Soon, about 1,000 papyrus scrolls will be gradually decoded, allowing us to appreciate the brilliant flowers blooming from the seeds of the former glorious Rome 2,000 years ago.